Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. My family is super wealthy, but they are also super annoying. For some reason, I wasn't cut from the same cloth as them. My siblings and I never had to work a day in our lives, and we were given all that we needed. They felt entitled and thought that the world revolved around them. They could be rude and treat people like they didn't matter. I didn't like that part of my family. However, it's not their fault because that is how we were raised. We were taught that the staff at our house were paupers and their job was to serve us, so we treated them as such. My parents were perfect for each other because they behaved alike. My father is a narcissist who only cares about what he wants at the expense of everyone else. When it was time to go to university, my parents wanted me to study business so I could handle the family estate. But I didn't want to be in charge of the estate, and I definitely didn't want to study business. What I really wanted to study was psychology, and no one was going to stop me. My mom tried her best to talk me out of it, but I didn't listen to her. My mind was made up. I couldn't imagine myself going into the same thing that made them the way they were. That is how I thought about it at the time, though now I know that it wasn't the businesses, influence, and wealth that had made them behave like that. They could have still chosen to be humble and treat people right. One evening, I had a big argument with my dad about my decision to study psychology, so he said that if that was what I wanted to do, he wouldn't cater to my dreams, so I needed to leave the house. He didn't want anything to do with a son that wouldn't care about the family enough to sacrifice his own dreams and aspirations. I was hurt that he would say that, but it wasn't a shock to me. My father never liked anyone standing against his authority, and if anyone tried, he would do whatever he wanted to without thinking so much about it. He may regret his decision later, but because of pride, he never takes back what he says. He asked me to leave the house. My mother tried to prevent him from making me leave, but his mind was made up. I left, and it was hard. Coming from having everything at my fingertips to nothing. Thank God I was smart and got a full ride scholarship. All I had to worry about was taking care of myself and my personal expenses. I thought that he couldn't have possibly threw me out. Maybe he just wanted to see if I would change my mind. A month passed, then 2, then 6 months, and now it's been 12 years since I left. I've been doing pretty well for myself. It wasn't so easy to scale down on literally everything, but I did it without any help from home. I was disappointed that my mom never tried to reach out. I thought she was better than that. I still spoke to my siblings, though, and we saw each other once in a while. Whenever we saw each other, they usually offered to give me some money, but I always declined. I didn't want my parents' money, plus I was their elder brother, so I'd rather give them money. After I got my bachelor's in psychology, I went on to work for an advertising agency and I fell in love with it. My knowledge in psychology made me stand out from those who only studied marketing. I started my own agency 4 years ago and I have been helping businesses with their marketing and branding strategies. Last week, I received a text from my sister that dad is sick, not critically, but he asked to see me. I didn't want to go, so I declined the invitation. He couldn't possibly think that I would come running to him after he abandoned me for 12 years, without even checking on me or making any effort to reach out. As far as I was concerned, my only family were my siblings, and I had no parents. Parents don't abandon their children. My other sister also called to try to persuade me. They wouldn't let me be, and I wanted them off my back. Little sisters can be a pain in the neck. I told them I'll come by the house this weekend just so they would leave me alone. I wasn't planning on going, but I became curious about what Dad wanted to say. I also thought that it would be nice to have my family back, because I'm not a fan of having a dysfunctional family. Let's hope this weekend goes well. I went to the house. It felt so weird being there after 12 long years. Everywhere seemed to have changed. The interior looked more modern and sophisticated. I'm sure the culprit was my mom, because she always liked to change up and renovate the house at least once a year. I was excited to see the garden because that was where I had most of my favorite memories as a kid. It felt awkward to see everyone again. My mom wouldn't look me in the eye with good reason. My sisters told me that my father didn't actually ask to see me, and in fact, he didn't know that I was coming. But it was true that he was sick, but like they mentioned before, it wasn't critical. They said they had planned it with my mom so we could reconcile and forgive each other. They knew that Dad and Mom were not happy about what they did years ago, but they didn't know how to go about mending our relationship. I couldn't even be upset, because I saw the heart in what they did, and if I was being totally honest, I missed my family, no matter how crazy they were. There were days I wish I had family to share my wins with. Dad was in his study, and he was shocked and wide-eyed when he saw me. He asked what I was doing in his house and if I had come back to my senses and was ready to run the family business. I said no, and I would never be. So he said, then I wasted my time coming, so I should leave. My mother and sisters wouldn't have it. They all asked me to stay. My mom told my dad that I wasn't going anywhere, and she has felt horrible from the day that he threw me out of the house, and this time she wasn't going to let it happen again. I had never seen my mom stand up for anyone like that before. That made me forgive her a little. My dad still didn't change his mind, and my mom maintained that I would still stay in the house at least until the weekend was over. I settled in my former room. It hadn't changed a bit. My sister told me that it was like the forbidden room in the house, and no one went there. They only came in to clean it up for me. I had a nostalgic feeling seeing all my things from years ago. I really want my family back and hoped that everything would go well, but if Dad didn't let things be, then I had no option than to go back to being the estranged son. The next day, my sister asked me to come downstairs. When I arrived, everyone was in the sitting room, including Dad. He said that he formally finalized that he had no son because of what happened between us, but now he would reconsider if I knelt down to beg him and agreed to work in the company. Everyone thought it was something I could easily do, but I didn't see it that way. Does this man know what he put me through for the last 12 years? Especially at the beginning, when I had to figure things out on my own. Now, I have a company that is doing so well, and I need nothing from him. I told him that I would do no such thing, and that he needs me more than I need him. The so-called estate he wants me to take over is at the verge of bankruptcy, because of mismanagement and not knowing the market. Things have changed, and the market has evolved, so he needs me because it's my job. I study psychology and understand the mind of a buyer, so I can help turn the company from its current situation. I demanded an apology from him and said I wanted nothing to do with him or the estate if he wouldn't come down from his high horse. He wasn't God, and things didn't always have to go the way he wanted them to. I also said that my first sister is excellent at business, but he won't let her take over because he had imagined it would be his son to run the company. He needs to move on from that and come to terms with it. I am never going to run his businesses. My sister threw a kiss at me for pointing that out. Everywhere became silent and he wouldn't say anything, so I turned around and left after I told them I was leaving first thing in the morning because I wasn't wanted. I didn't know that the news about bankruptcy was concealed from my mom and sisters, so they were shocked to hear it. My father's pride wouldn't let him get help or tell his family that things weren't going well. He kept taking loans to finance their expensive lifestyle because he didn't want to be termed poor. My mother gave him a piece of her mind and told him that he single-handedly destroyed the family because of his ego. They both had wronged me, and it wasn't a big deal if I asked for an apology. She mentioned that I had grown my agency to become one of the most prestigious advertising agencies in the city, and she was very proud of me. She didn't need me to run the business. She just wanted her son back. She came to my room all teary and apologized to me. She said she wasn't strong enough to stand up to my father, and that was the biggest mistake she ever made in her life, and as time went by, it became too late to do anything about it. The next morning, I was preparing to leave when I heard a knock on the door. I opened it, and it was my father. He broke down in tears. That was the first time I ever saw him show any real emotion. I started to cry and he apologized and said he wasn't a good father to me at all and that he had wanted to reach out, but he thought the damage was already done, so he kept going with it. He said I could do whatever I wanted with my life, and he is really proud of how far I've come, but ashamed that he had no part in it. I forgave him. Not the a-hole. This made me emotional because my parents don't want to support my dream either, so I can relate with how you must have felt. I moved out of the house a week ago, and I am currently trying to find my bearings. I am so happy that you guys got back together and you were able to forgive them. Not the a-hole. But father is. What is it with fathers and their ego? His son turned out perfect, but he missed all of it. He would probably still regret all he did to you for the rest of his life. Next story. I, 28F, own a 3-bedroom flat. My friend, 27F, was struggling for a place to stay, so I told her she could stay with me, and I rent her one of my rooms out till she found somewhere else. This was just a loose agreement, not on paper or anything, as she is my friend. She has been staying with me for over 7 months. All things considered, she was a decent enough roommate. She didn't eat my food, she paid me on time, but it annoyed me that she sometimes forget to give notice that her boyfriend was staying overnight. But she always apologized and promised next time she remembered to. And she did. Maybe half the time. The issue came about 2 days ago, when I walked into my home and found her boyfriend watching TV. I was a bit surprised by this, as my friend shouldn't be home yet, but I asked if she was in the other room. He told me no, and he was just waiting for her to come back from work. At this point, I was more than a little on edge by the fact he was somehow here without her, and asked him how he gotten in. He showed me the key and said she had given him one so he could come around to hang out. I won't lie, I was shocked at this and rather upset. I demanded he give me the key back and get out of my home. He seemed surprised and ready to protest as she'd given him the key, but I told him that this was my home and she had no right to do that and to get out now. He handed over the key, clearly thinking I was overreacting, but left. When my roommate came back, I confronted her asking why she thought she had any right to give a key out, and to especially do so without asking me. She told me I was being unreasonable and it was her home too, so she should be able to give out keys if she wanted to. This led to an argument, and I finally told her that this wasn't her home. She was only renting a room and she was to get out within 2 weeks because I don't trust her now. The last 2 days, she's been trying to tell me I've been overreacting and I'm being unfair. She has apologized, though admittedly she doesn't see what the big deal is and is begging me not to kick her out. Am I the a-hole? As some people think 2 weeks isn't much time to find a new place, don't worry. She won't end up on the streets. She can find a new place or go back to her parents' home, which is where she was staying until I let her move in. If she didn't have them to go to, she'd have more time. Not the a-hole massively. This is your home. You were good to let her stay, but she abused your trust by giving out a key to someone else without your permission. I'm sure if she asked you first, you'd have said no. This isn't forgivable, in my opinion, and she doesn't even seem that sorry because she still doesn't think it was wrong of her to do. Not the a-hole. It's your home. It sounds like you panicked in the moment, which is perfectly understandable, so I can see how you mistake this for an overreaction. But rest assured, this is perfectly understandable. 2 weeks is a bit short, if I'm honest. But oh well, at some point she was going to move out, right? This was always meant to be temporary. Next story. So I've, 30M, gotten into a really messy situation, and I need this place to give me a verdict. So I was in a 6-year relationship with a single mom named Tara, 33F. When we met, she had an 8-year-old daughter named Sasha. We took things very slow with the whole situation. Eventually, she introduced me to her daughter, and things went really well. After 4 years of dating, we finally got engaged with her daughter's blessing. But we had an obstacle stopping me from tying the knot. I wanted my own biological kids. It was important to me and something I've always wanted. Tara was open to this, and we had plans of having our own kids. Well, 5 years into the relationship, she was still on birth control measures. I kept saying that she knew I wanted kids, and what was the deal? She kept pushing off the conversation. Eventually, it came out that she didn't want to have more kids. At first, she thought she did, but she changed her mind. I told her that was unfortunate and decided to break off the engagement. Tara was hurt and wouldn't even let me explain things to Sasha. I was basically gone the next day. I moved a couple of blocks away to a new house. Sasha somehow found out where I moved to and started showing up, like just knocking on my door. The first couple of times I opened the door and talked to her, explaining the situation and telling her she couldn't stop by without her mom knowing, and it was inappropriate. She did it again, and this time was demanding to know why I didn't talk to her like I used to. So I drove her back to her mom's and we had a sit-down conversation with the three of us. We explained the situation and told her she needed to let it go. So I started dating someone a few days after the breakup. Things have been going really well, but when she parked in my driveway this past weekend, her car was damaged. She had a soda thrown on the windshield and scratch marks on her driver's side door. I checked my security footage and I could see someone on a bike ride up to her car and do the damage. But it was late at night and the person had a mask and hood on. In my head, it was Sasha, but I had no evidence. So this Sunday morning, there is a knock on my door, and it's Sasha again. It's like 8 a.m. I was fed up. I called Tara, but noticed that it was blocked. I tried social media, and it was blocked there too. So I called the cops. The cops showed up and talked to Sasha and me. I explained the whole situation, and they called Tara. Tara showed up, looking out of sorts, and Sasha was crying. I said I wouldn't press charges this time, but the next time she's at my house, I will. Tara needs to be more aware of where her daughter is, and to maybe get therapy. I'm sick of dealing with this, and that maybe if she didn't block me, I wouldn't have had to call the cops. Tara screamed at me, and called me a ton of names. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. As Tara left you no other choice because she blocked you. It's completely understandable for Sasha, as a 13-year-old who had you in her life for nearly half of it, that it's difficult to see you suddenly gone. That being said, Tara needs to do a better job of recognizing that no longer having you around has had a negative impact on her daughter, causing her to now frequent your house uninvited to try and have further contact with you, even though you no longer have anything to do with her or Tara.